Well, thank you all so much again for joining us this evening. We are super excited to run you through how you can really balance your hormones naturally with seed cycling and all of the amazing information that we're going to share on why understanding your hormone health is really so important. So I am Sarina Coventry. I'm a clinical nutritionist and EFT tapping practitioner and one of the team here at the Seed Cycle. I typically work with our wholesalers and our affiliates and do all the back end things. And I also work in my own clinic, so supporting women with their reproductive health, their menstrual health, and then using EFT tapping, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's emotional freedom techniques, and it works on the nervous system and emotional regulation. And every time Mel and I have run these masterclasses or these webinars, I'm just so grateful to be here and so grateful that you want to learn this information, that you're interested, because I know I can speak for Mel and myself. We just want to share this information with the whole world and all the women that want to listen. So thanks for being here. And this is Melissa, our beautiful founder.
Thanks, Sarina. Thanks, everyone. I love these webinars so much. We have so much to share with you, but we do want to make it like interactive. So feel free to, like Sarina said, like pop questions in the chat, and we'll kind of like, we're happy to even like bounce topics. And, even if we don't use any of the slides and we end up just having a conversation about and answering your questions, like that's totally worth it to us. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Kovacevic. I'm the founder of the Seed Cycle. My background is in functional nutrition, and I'm also an EFT tapping practitioner as well. I am such a huge believer in food as medicine, and especially now more than ever, it really is my mission to help women understand their cycles and support their cycles. I've said it before and I'll say it again, like the solutions that are, the mainstream solutions for hormone imbalances like the pill or hysterectomies aren't solutions, they're band-aids, and they're not good enough. And there are so many ways that we can support our hormones naturally. Seed cycling is one of those. I never thought I would have a health food product. It was never the plan. The Seed Cycle came about because I was using seed cycling and teaching my clients how to seed cycle, and I started packaging for them to make it easier, because they would say things like, Mel, it's all too hard and I keep forgetting to buy the seeds and I can't find certified organic, and why do I have to grind them up? And I was like, well, I'm doing my own blend, so why don't I just do it for you? And it turned out to be something that I could never have dreamt of. We went into it very naively, but I think that's the only way to do it. And now, we ship worldwide. We have close to 100 stockists, and we're really able to educate women on their cycles and seed cycling, and the products are there as a convenient way for you guys to seed cycle. Okay, so I want to start off with discussing the issues. I already shared one of them, which is the current solutions for hormone issues. But some of these stats are really deeply concerning. So globally, 90% of women will experience at least one PMS symptom at some point in their lives. I'd love to know in the chat, have you heard that stat before? Is it surprising to you as well? Is this the first time you're hearing that? 90% of women globally. So within this, 20 to 40% of these women experience PMS monthly, and 2 to 8% experience PMDD, which is a severe form of PMS. So 8 to 13% of women are diagnosed. Yeah, as you said, so many. Like every time I read that, it's like I feel it in my stomach, because it's crazy that this is happening and it's not being spoken about more. So yeah, 8 to 13% of women diagnosed with PCOS, and up to 70% of cases are undiagnosed globally. Last year, Sarina and I interviewed 500 women, and all but 2 said they had some form of hormone-related issue. So what was interesting about these conversations, sometimes at first they would say, no, my hormones are fine, but then as the conversation went on, that, you know, they would say things like, oh yeah, I do get a migraine every month, and I do get really moody before my period, and my periods are really heavy, or I haven't had a period for years. And, you know, so there was a real, what we realized was that we don't even know the symptoms, and we think that these things are normal, but really they're not. They're a sign that there's an imbalance, and that our bodies need support. So, you know, we love to talk and teach about, like, what are the common signs and symptoms.
And what's exciting within this is, you know, there is a lot of scary stats, but recently we are seeing that women are starting to move away from hormonal-based contraception and medication to more of these natural solutions. And if any of you listen to and follow Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, I absolutely love all of his podcasts. He just released an incredible episode with Dr. Sarah Hill, and she's just written a book on the impacts of birth control. And she shared that there's actually no solid research to look at how the pill is changing the brain chemistry of teens and the impacts that this is having on their brain development long term, which is quite scary. Mel and I were just chatting about this before, and even the way that being on the pill changes your attraction to male partners, if you're heterosexual, or partners in general, and how, you know, so many women have come off the pill and then completely change their level of attraction to their partner. So there's some really huge things that it is doing to our body. And often it's prescribed for reasons beyond birth control. So it is really exciting to see that women are moving away from that. And as Mel said, these period problems have been normalized a lot. So we try really hard at the Seed Cycle to provide that education to women that know their problems. Or yes, their problems are normal, common, but they're not normal at all.
Okay, so speaking about the common signs and symptoms, I would really like for you to add in the chat, do you experience any of these or other symptoms? So irregular cycles, heavy or painful periods, mood swings, fatigue, weight changes, changes in libido, skin changes, hormonal acne, hair loss, thinning, hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, mood. Every time I read this slide, I'm like, oh, mood changes are twice, mood swings, and then we never update. Bone density loss, urinary symptoms, cognitive changes, sleep problems, digestive issues. For me, it was hormonal migraines and the mood changes, like right before my period. They were the two that I, even after studying nutrition and working with women, I just thought it was part of being a woman. And it wasn't until I started really understanding hormone health that I was like, hey, there's an imbalance happening. I am not producing enough progesterone. So yeah, you know, these symptoms. So irregular periods, fatigue, a big one, skin and hair thinning, mood, digestive issues. Yes, a lot more in the past, as you said, but I know I have more I could do. Yeah. And this is the thing with hormone health, you know, it's so great when we can get it to a stage, but I know even for myself, like, it's like that monthly report card, and the months where I don't do all the things to take care of myself, it shows up in the symptoms. Yeah, so just highlighting these, and feel free to share with us even privately some of the symptoms that you are experiencing, and we can help you there. Something that we have started to share more recently, not to scare you, but because it really does need to be spoken about, and that's the long-term consequences that of a hormone imbalance, and these can be quite severe. So often, you know, the symptoms, you know, like whether it is the hormonal migraines or the fatigue or the mood changes, we kind of just put up with it and suck it up. But the longer you leave it, the long-term consequences are really, like I said, severe, like poor cardiovascular health, bone consequences, greater risk of anxiety and depression, fertility issues, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, hypothyroidism, obesity, sleep apnea. So, these are really reasons why you want to support your hormones now and not just, suck it up.
And ways that the medical system commonly treats hormone imbalances, and I touched on this briefly, and this is by no means to say that, things like the oral contraceptive pill have been amazing for women, and it's given women so much control of their reproductive health. But now what we're seeing is that it is being overprescribed. So typically, and I see this a lot in clinic, typically if a woman has missing periods or heavy periods or potentially PCOS or acne and she goes to her GP, the first thing they do is try and put her on the pill. And yes, it might make some of these sort of signs and symptoms go away, but all it's doing is masking whatever that hormone imbalance is. So often hormonal contraception's used, whether that's the pill or the Implanon or vaginal rings, or even I've heard some women who get a hysterectomy or a laparoscopy. And of course, again, there are times where this is necessary, but we want these to be more like the final resort where we're using all these natural therapies and using food as medicine before that's kind of the first thing. I've seen this as well in terms of medication with women going and being put on anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants. Yet when we talk a little bit more about, okay, well, when do you feel anxious or when do you feel the depression? It's very cyclical. And if more practitioners had an understanding of this and the way that hormone imbalances work, then a lot of the time we would be getting to the root cause and women wouldn't have to be put on medication as much. And there's also numerous side effects to these treatments. And like I said before, ultimately they are not treating the root cause. So we want to support women in understanding that there are other things they can do, seed cycling being one of them. There was also a study in 2023 about oral contraceptive users, and 8% of those women had an increase in anxiety, and 24% of them had an increase in broad spectrum mental health challenges. So it's not kind of covering up all symptoms. Some symptoms are getting worse for women. And we really want to pave a new way for these women to understand that there's different and alternative solutions that they can use. So let's talk about hormones. Is there any way to zoom? It looks quite, is that big enough for everyone to read? It's kind of almost zoomed itself out. I think you guys will be able to see it. So has everyone heard of these different phases of the menstrual cycle? So your period, which most of us know, the follicular phase, the luteal phase, premenstrual. Is there anyone who hasn't heard of these? You can drop an N in the chat. Cool. This is great. So we have these different phases of our menstrual cycle, and you can see above when we look at a man's cycle, he has a pretty consistent, pretty regular 24-hour cycle, which we refer to as a circadian rhythm. So this is the way that this is how men show up pretty similar day in, day out, because the way that their testosterone and their estrogen is fluctuating is just on that 24-hour cycle. Whereas when it comes to women, we have different hormones that are rising and falling at different times of the month. And you may have heard of the infradian rhythm, which this is that 28-day rhythm. And so we have this really beautiful and kind of complex ebb and flow of these hormones. And when it comes to seed cycling, the main hormones that we're working with are estrogen and progesterone, which are the two most dominant hormones in our menstrual cycle. So you can see here with that little red line in the first half of your cycle, estrogen is going to be that dominant hormone. And estrogen is what we need for those little follicles to develop, for us to release an egg and to ovulate. And then progesterone is the dominant hormone in the second half. And we actually have to ovulate in order to produce progesterone. Now, each of these different hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are actually impacting the body in different ways. So when we have estrogen highest in the first half, we're going to have different nutritional requirements. We're going to have a different level of energy. We're going to have a different level of motivation. We're going to be working out differently. And then same as in the second half of our cycle, when progesterone is dominant, that's going to be influencing again our energy and our mood and the nutrients our body requires. So this is where the magic of seed cycling comes in, and the importance of cycling those nutrients, so that when we have the seeds in the first half of our cycle, and we'll get a little bit more into this, but when we're having those specific seeds, the pumpkin and flax in the first half of your cycle, it's really supporting the body to produce and detoxify that estrogen. And then the pumpkin and the sesame and sunflower seeds in phase 2 are really, really supportive for that progesterone production. And this is, again, why that cycling is so important.
Yeah, I'd love to know. It's so cool that everyone here knows of this. I'd love to know in the chat, like, how long have you understood that this is how we cycle? Like for me, even, it was seed cycling that introduced me to the phases. Like I thought my menstrual cycle was when I bled. Like I knew about ovulation when I went to fall pregnant, but that was about it. I had no idea that I had, like Sarina was saying, like different nutrient requirements, different, like I am a very different person in each phase. And this is because of the hormones. And then that comparison, like when I first saw that comparison to the male hormone levels, it was just like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense now. And as you said, only about 6 years. So I hope that this is starting to be taught 1 year to in schools, and really understanding it, like the foundations, and this body literacy. And I'd love to know, like, has this been when you found out and when you learned about this like 6 years ago, a year ago, like was it life-changing for you? Yeah. It's life-changing. It's like I knew this, but I didn't, like, it's like everything, it's like, oh gosh, it makes sense. Good.
Will you imagine how many more women would actually feel empowered by their health and empowered by their cycle and their body if we were taught this in school?
Mm.
When we look at the relationship between hormone balance and perimenopause and menopause, we get so many questions about this in our chats, in our emails all the time. And I think there is a lot of kind of fear and worry that women have when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, because most of the time you hear these kind of horror stories where women are having these really hot flushes and night sweats, or really heavy periods, or all these big mood changes and a low libido and vaginal dryness, which I think a lot of women actually don't understand what is happening to their hormones and how it's changing. So when we look at these life stages in our hormones, often perimenopause is referred to as your second puberty, because you can see when you just start to get your period, when you go into puberty, your hormones are kind of trying to rejig themselves and figure out how they're meant to operate each month, what's kind of happening. And then as we come out of our fertile years and out of our reproductive years, we're having a similar process happen again, where we're seeing this shift in our hormones. And this can start happening to women as they move through their 40s. For some women, it can be quite debilitating. For some women, if they know how to support themselves properly, it can make this transition much easier. And this is where seed cycling can come in as well, because you can see here that we often get elevated levels of estrogen, which can kind of create that heavy bleeding or that irregular periods or the difficulty losing weight. So then when we have something like flax seeds and the seeds, we're able to support that estrogen production and support that progesterone, so that we can, I guess, nourish the body to help this transition become a little bit more easier for it.
Okay, let's get into seed cycling. I'd love to know in the chat, put a Y if you are already seed cycling. Put an M if you're thinking about it and want more information. So Y for already doing it, M for more information. That way I'll kind of know, yeah, okay, great. I'll know how much detail to go into. We've got a yes. So seed cycling, it's an ancient practice using food as medicine. Francis, I'm trying, but I keep getting confused. Okay, we'll make sure it's super clear by the end of this. And it combines the best of nutritional, naturopathic, Ayurvedic practices and Chinese medicine to help restore hormone balance for women. In terms of how it works, it's very simple. 4 key seeds, and the concept is that the nutrients in the seeds can contain important vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, which support the production, elimination of the key hormones that we were talking about and looking at that graph, which is estrogen and progesterone. As Sarina was saying, like when these hormones are out of balance, that's when we are really experiencing those symptoms that were on that page that we went through. In terms of how to seed cycle, where or let's talk about first like why you would want to seed cycle and what it can support. So we're seeing really great results with PMS symptoms and irregular periods. We notice within 3 months cycles start to regulate, and we notice the PMS symptoms reduce. It does take around, within the first month, women will say my skin's feeling brighter, my digestion's feeling better, but really it's a 3 months mark when we start to notice that hormone modulation. It supports fertility and conception. I remember one of the first clients that I was working with seed cycling, she ran into my office and she said, I'm pregnant, I think it was the seeds. And at that point I didn't know much about seed cycling for fertility, but now working with thousands of women and so many success stories, what we know is that the nutrients in the seeds are supporting a healthy cycle, a healthy ovulation, which of course is increasing the chances of conception. When it comes to fertility, I always do say, like, I wouldn't want someone to like put off going to see a specialist and say, I'm going to try seed cycling first. No, you go see your specialist. You go and work with the people that you need to work with. You add seed cycling in as an adjunct. So that's what we talk about. We had a question there where Sarina said we can explain more. Great. Hormonal acne and skin breakouts, teens and puberty. That's something that really excites us. Usually it's the mum that's seed cycling, and then she'll come to us and say, oh my gosh, my daughter just got a period. Can she start seed cycling? And we're like, yes, like what a beautiful introduction to food as medicine, to understanding her cycle, and also the adding food in that is going to support your health. Like particularly now we're seeing a lot of that diet culture, and that, you know, the macros, the calorie counting, and the, you know, we see a lot when we're working with the fitness industry, and there's a lot of scarcity and restriction. Whereas when you focus on like, what can I have, particularly as a teenager, like what can I have that it's going to nourish and support my body and my hormones, like so beautiful. Menopause and transitioning of birth control as well, which we'll explain in more detail. Do we want to answer that question now, Sarina?
Yeah, so if you had a hysterectomy but kept your ovaries, so no period but still possibly ovulating, I would just be cycling with the phase of the moon, unless you can pinpoint when you, well, if you're not bleeding, you probably aren't ovulating. So I would just be after
use the
hysterectomy.
moon. It's so, yeah, use the moon. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and we'll explain that. So we'll go into now about cycling with the regular menstrual cycle, and then how you can cycle with the lunar calendar if you don't have a regular menstrual cycle.
Yeah, amazing.
So
oh, your
sorry,
turn.
Mel.
Go for it.
So when you're seed cycling with a regular menstrual cycle, you will begin phase 1 in your follicular phase. So this is day 1 of your period up until about day 14. And so these beautiful seeds, the flax seeds and the pumpkin seeds, are going to be really supporting, if you think back to that graph where estrogen is our main hormone, are going to really be supporting that estrogen production and elimination. So flax seeds in particular are rich in something called lignans. You might also hear lignans referred to as phytoestrogens. And basically what these do is they have a really intelligent way of communicating with the body and checking in to be like, okay, does the body need more estrogen or less estrogen? And this is why, seed cycling can work for a woman in perimenopause where she might have high estrogen, and also a woman who has a missing period because she has really low estrogen. It has this incredible way of really checking in and being like, okay, what does the body need in terms of estrogen? We've also got omega-3 fatty acids, which support that estrogen metabolism and support overall hormone balance. We've got pumpkin seeds, which are high in zinc. This is also really important for a healthy ovulation and reproductive health in general. And just 1 tablespoon of each seed within phase 1 gives you over 100% of the recommended intake of omega-3 fatty acids, 25% of your daily magnesium, 14% of your daily manganese, and you can read the rest of those numbers, but it's kind of like this little nutrient powerhouse. And what I see the most in clinic, especially women sort of between the ages of 15 and 35, is this picture of estrogen dominance. And when we have too much estrogen, we have excess estrogen, or we're not excreting it properly through our bowels or the support of our liver health, then we see a lot of these symptoms, especially the acne and the inability to lose weight and the changes to our moods or the really heavy periods. So supporting that estrogen metabolism is going to be really important.
Yeah, I'll tell the story of the GPs.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had this slide up, and we were going through all the nutrients that are found in the seeds, and one of the GPs. So we've been training GPs on seed cycling, and one of the GPs said to us, "Oh, so you fortify the seeds with those nutrients?" And we said, "No, nature does that for us." So sometimes. Yeah, it's like food as medicine is overlooked. And I think that I know nature is way smarter than science has even figured out. And I'm sure there is way more nutrients that we even know about in those seeds. But yeah, it's just, it was something I don't think we'll ever forget.
No, never. Taking that one to the grave.
Yeah. Okay, so this one is our phase 2. So this is for our luteal phase, and we're having sunflower seeds and sesame seeds. Sunflower seeds are rich in vitamin E, so 47% of your daily vitamin E, and this is a big reason why I think, like I said, women say like within the first month, my skin feels so much brighter. We're seeing incredible results with hormonal acne, which we'll show you, and then also those nutrients and the fibers as well in the seeds. Sesame seeds also contain more lignans, and I just love that the phase 2 seeds are higher in fatty acids and calories, and in the second half of our cycle we need more calories. So it's just so clever how it takes into account that we have those different nutrient requirements, and we're not small men. We need different nutrients in the different phases. So I just find that so clever. So yeah, let's talk about the moon. And so this is where I think seed cycling was put in the woo-woo world, because we're talking about a full moon and a new moon. And I used to kind of tiptoe around this or like apologize for this. I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, it's woo-woo, but I'm not doing that anymore because it's so important. The moon phases mimic a menstrual cycle, and we as humans, we are cyclical. And when we're menstruating and our cycles are regular, then our menstrual cycle is our dominant rhythm. But if we're on birth control, which shuts down that cycle, if our cycle's irregular, missing, going through perimenopause, and if you've had a hysterectomy as well, then you can connect with the moon phases and seed cycle with the moon phases. So you're having phase 1 seeds from a new moon and phase 2 from a full moon. A lot of people say, I don't know when the moon is full and new. We send you reminders. Every fortnight, we'll send you an email reminder. Just sign up to our mailing list and it will say, new moon, switch to phase 1. Full moon, switch to phase 2. You can also find this information in your weather app. But once you do a couple cycles, you'll start to feel really connected, and women will say, Mel, you've got me looking at the moon and I don't know, but like I feel grounded, I feel connected. It's just like our bodies love connecting to that cyclical rhythm. And you know, when you look back throughout history, women have used the moon to support their fertility, to regulate their cycles. We used to bleed together on a new moon, ovulate together on a full moon. So this is where we are bringing some of that ancient wisdom back out, and it is so powerful. A lot of the women that I work with, they start seed cycling with the moon because they're irregular, they don't know their cycle, they're on the pill, and what we find is after a couple months their cycle will regulate. I do often then say give it another cycle with the moon, keep tracking your cycle, and then they switch over and then they start seed cycling with their own menstrual cycle. I'd love to know if that explains it in terms of the moon. Yeah, if you want us to explain it again in a different way, like please just say don't get it yet in the chat, more explanation about the moon, and we can do that, because I know it can take a little bit to get your head around. In terms of the doses, so I actually, Sarina, I forgot to tell you, I had a question about this the other day. Someone was like, oh, you're not giving the correct dose of seeds, you're only giving 1 tablespoon, and that's not true. It says 1 scoop, but our 1 scoop is 2 tablespoons, so we are using the dosage that is recommended, that is used in the studies, that's recommended by Dr. Brighton, that's recommended by Elisa Vitti in the flow, and yeah, so it's 1 tablespoon of each seed in the corresponding phase ground. So this is really important as well, particularly flaxseed and sesame seeds. If you're having them whole, they're going straight through you. Your body's not able to access any of the nutrients inside. In terms of the research for seed cycling for PCOS, the seeds are ground. So we take the seeds through a cold milling process. This also helps remove the anti-nutrients, so similar to soaking, but without the risk of going rancid with or moldy with the soaking. So the grinding process is really important. Let's answer some questions. So can it be harmful to keep eating the seeds in the different phases of the cycle? Great question. No, definitely making sure that you're having the therapeutic dose of the seeds that you're in that phase. But say, you know, if you're in phase 2 and you've got extra pumpkin seed or flax seed, or maybe you're having a flax seed muffin or something like that, that's completely fine. Vice versa with the other one. I do get asked, like, well, can't I just have all 4 seeds every day and then I'm done? And I'm like, yeah, that's a great nutrient source, but you're missing that whole cyclical side of it, which is really where the power is in seed cycling, connecting with your cycle, giving your body the nutrients it needs, that hormone modulation, estrogen in the first phase, progesterone in the second phase. So I always encourage people to do the seed cycling. Okay, I've been seed cycling since June. My menstruation from 47 days to 33 days now. I'm happy for the result. But I have bloating with issue with flax seeds and IBS. That's a great result. Well done for sticking with it. And to get your cycle to 33 days, that's, yeah, so good. In terms of flaxseed, yes, if you have IBS, it can cause a bit of bloating. We do suggest that you half the dose. So instead of a full scoop, half a scoop, which should help. And then you might find that over time, slowly you can build it up. Yeah. Cool.
So this is some of the current evidence to support seed cycling, which is really exciting because although seed cycling has been around for a really long time and has been used by so many naturopaths and nutritionists, it's actually been hard to find, evidence that actually supports the practice itself. There is so much research on the seeds individually, especially flax seeds and pumpkin seeds, all for their benefits to women's health and hormones. But this is the first one to come out on kind of a specific reproductive condition, which is incredible. So this was the effectiveness of combined seeds, so the seeds that we use in seed cycling, pumpkin, sunflower, sesame, and flax, as an adjacent therapy to treating polycystic ovarian syndrome. And PCOS is such a common, I believe it's 1 in 10 women experience PCOS, and that has implications for your fertility, it has implications for weight. Women start growing excess hair on their body and acne and all these kind of signs and symptoms that can be quite challenging for women. So this was a 3-month study that involved 60 women who were all diagnosed with PCOS. They were divided into 3 different groups. So the control group had no changes to their diet whatsoever. The second group had a portion-controlled diet and were put on a drug called metformin, which is probably one of the most common drugs used to treat PCOS and insulin resistance. And then the third group were put on another portion-controlled diet and given seed cycling. So after 3 months of using this protocol, the same dosage of 1 tablespoon ground each day of whichever corresponding seeds in the phase of their cycle, we saw the biggest reduction in body weight in the seed cycling group, which was amazing. We also saw hormone balance, so FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone, are 2 other hormones in our menstrual cycle. And often for women who have PCOS, they're quite elevated, or there's kind of a ratio that we look at between them, which is elevated. So we saw the biggest decreased levels in the seed cycling group, and same as the LH in the seed cycling group as well. There was cyst degeneration. So as it sounds, polycystic ovarian syndrome, often women have excess cysts on their ovaries. That's not enough to diagnose PCOS, but it is typically part of it. And there were before and after ultrasound images. This was based on previous research that has been done, but it actually showed a 36% overall cyst reduction after 3 months of the seed cycling, which is so incredible. And this is literally using food as medicine, using an all-natural product. We're not, as Mel said before, we're not pulling apart any active constituents. We're really giving you food. And this is such a testament to the power of food. We also saw a slight reduction in, I think there were just 2 more, slight reduction in TSH, which is our thyroid stimulating hormone. And one of the really good things was this study was conducted without any external funding or grants. And you always want to check that in research, because sometimes these bigger companies will actually pay for their own in-house research to be done, which often is a little bit biased with the results. And of course, like all research, there's a lot of room for improvement in this, but women have only been included in research in the last 35 years for clinical trials. So Mel touched on this before, but we've typically just been used as, or just thrown into the research as small men. And we see this when it comes to cold water therapy and ketogenic diets and paleo and intermittent fasting and all these things, where we're being treated as if we have this 24-hour cycle where we have a 28-day cycle. So a lot of women who are using these protocols where the research says, yeah, this has great results on weight loss or hormone balance or whatnot, none of it is going to work for us the same way it's going to work for men, because we're shifting and changing across the month.
Okay, this is Dr. Brighton's protocol for seed cycling to help women get off the pill. So this is something that a lot of women come to us with, especially after doing some research, usually hearing one of our talks, doing some research and finding out that the pill's actually not balancing their hormones, that it's shutting everything down, and they are wanting to and a lot of the times it's not being used for birth control. It is a hormone imbalance band-aid. Something that's really important that just isn't spoken about enough is help supporting your body and preparing your body to come off the pill. Because what we hear is, I came off, everything went to shit. My skin broke out. I felt like I was losing my mind. I freaked out and went back on. And now I'm even more scared to come off. And that's because, like, if you think about it, like you know, if you've been on the pill for years, you haven't been cycling, your body hasn't been ovulating. And the pill also depletes nutrients. So you're nutrient depleted. And then you got to get off and, you know, like they say, like, it's like it was a shit show. So, what we find is if you can start seed cycling 3 months before you go to get off, help your body to replenish some of those nutrients that have been depleted, help your body remember that cyclical rhythm. So we're going to seed cycle with the moon phases. Like women will say, oh, can I just use my pill cycle? The moon, like use the moon, connect with the moon, because you're not, that pill cycle isn't a menstrual cycle. So this is where we'll get you to connect with the moon, seed cycle with the moon, and then get off and continue seed cycling when you get off. What we find is within 3 months, your cycle returns. It's nice and regular. You know, we want to say, oh my gosh, my skin was fine, I was so worried about it. And we're finding that it's a lot smoother transition. I think also just, you know, mindset wise, having something to do to prepare your body, it's so powerful. And I hope that this starts to be used more and more, and there is more conversations around how to prepare your body for coming off the pill. For weight management. So this was the reason I started looking into hormone health. So at the time I was working, so this was 8 years ago now. I was working with women and I was priding myself on this holistic approach, and I was working a lot with women for weight loss. And I was like, you know, gut health was really trendy. So I was like really into like microbiome and like fermented foods. And then we're doing EFT, which is incredible for those beliefs we have around food in our body, and supporting cortisol levels and using real food. And the weight wasn't coming off. And I'm like, what are we missing? And clients would come back and say, Mel, I was doing really well. And then PMS hit and cravings and you know, painful periods and everything else. And that's when I realized like this commonality of like hormones. And I started researching, and that's where I came across seed cycling. And what I realized was when you're trying to lose weight and you've got a hormone imbalance, it's like pushing shit uphill. It's really, really hard. So what I found was we added seed cycling in along with all the other amazing things that we were doing. And finally, I truly had my holistic approach that I wanted. And the weight started to come off. A huge part of what I used to teach as well was mindful and intuitive eating. And that really also was a key to the weight management. But we see this now with seed cycle customers as well. You know, they'll say like, oh, I'm feeling much fuller, and that's because of all those nutrients and the fatty acids in the food. So I'm snacking less. I'm feeling less bloated, and then we see those hormones level out, and then the weight loss happen, which is really great.
I think one thing as well that I see a lot is, especially if you're using the 1 month pack where you're kind of sprinkling the seeds onto your food, a lot of women will say, well, I'm adding something that's really healthy to my food. So I actually want to improve the food that I'm eating. So instead of just adding it to a bowl of cereal in the morning, they're like, oh, I want to make like a breakfast bowl, or I want to make oats. So it kind of has this side benefit that we almost didn't expect, of encouraging women to want to eat better as well.
Yeah.
Here's an article as well we wrote. I'll add it into the chat, on the science of weight loss for hormones.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
So when it comes to seed cycling for hormonal acne, this is when I first started working with the seed cycle, this was a benefit I hadn't even thought of yet. I was thinking, you know, fertility, menstrual health, periods, and then all these pictures and women started sharing how much it was clearing their skin. And we now have, you know, so many of our retailers are actually skin clinics, because it works so incredibly well on supporting that hormonal acne picture. So the benefits for your skin is that we've got all these beautiful nutrients, the omega-3 fatty acids, the zinc, and you can see, you know, such a reduction in that inflammation and how red and angry the skin looks. So omega-3 fatty acids, specifically that ALA, is anti-inflammatory. So really soothes that redness, really soothes, as I said before, how kind of angry your skin looks. The zinc also regulates sebum production, and this can prevent clogging of pores that can create further acne. Again, it's anti-inflammatory, it can support that skin and tissue repair, and can also reduce androgens. So typically when someone comes off the pill, what we see is this surge in androgens, which is testosterone. And so when we get the surge in androgens plus a surge in that sebum production, we get these little almost like pea-like cysts on the skin, and they don't really have a head that you can pop. They can be really uncomfortable. So when we do seed cycle for that 3 months, as Mel said before, that zinc really helps to regulate the sebum and reduce those androgens so you don't get the cystic acne. We've also got vitamin E, so this is an antioxidant. Again, it's anti-inflammatory and promotes skin healing. And the combined effect of these nutrients, really in the first month, we're seeing those results. So the more challenging period problems and menstrual symptoms, they do take around 3 months, but the skin responds so quickly. And I think Mel said this in the beginning, where women are noticing their skin's more clearer, it's more dewy, it's more shiny and glowy. And then the seeds are also rich in fiber. So this acts as a prebiotic, and we've got pre and probiotics. Probiotics are like the little bacteria, and prebiotics is basically the food that feeds the good bacteria. So this supports our digestion. It also aids in toxin elimination, because if you're not going to the bathroom and you're constipated and you're holding all of these toxins in, you're holding all of this kind of packaged estrogen that's ready to be excreted, then what happens is it actually gets reabsorbed into the body. So we see estrogen rise, we see those toxins impact the skin. So that fiber and digestive support is going to be really helpful too for balancing out hormones.
And these are some of the incredible pregnancy success stories, and as well as I remember Laura sending me her app, which showed her cycle regulate. So it went from 50 days to 29, 28, like really quickly, which was incredible. I remember one of the first pregnancy success stories that was shared with me was over email, and she said, only you and my husband know, so like please don't say anything yet, but once I'm 3 months I'm going to be shouting seed cycling from the rooftop. And I just remember breaking down and thinking, like, you've told, like, I've never met this amazing person, and like you've told me of everyone you could tell, like you told me. And she really said that the seeds that had supported her conception pregnancy, which is amazing. Okay, let's make sure that it's super clear on how to get started for seed cycling. So hopefully this little 1, 2, 3 step process helps. We can also like pop it in the chat, like your question of like how to get started for you and your situation, and we'll help you. So step 1 is if you determine whether you'll be seed cycling with your menstrual cycle or the moon. So if your cycle's regular, which is around 28 days, give or take, then use your own cycle. Like we said, going through perimenopause, irregular, even if you don't know where you're at in your cycle, on the pill, use the moon. It's a new moon on the 1st of December, so in a couple of days, so perfect time to start phase 2. In saying that, you don't need to wait till day 1 of your period or a new moon to get started. Like we want you, because, you know, like we were saying, it's not a quick fix. It takes at least 3 cycles. We want you to get started ASAP. So, you know, even if you're starting today, I would take phase 2 for a couple days until the new moon switches over, if you're using the moon, and then switch to phase 1. If you're, say, around day 10 of your cycle, take phase 1 for a couple more days until you're around that day 15. If you know when you're ovulating, even better, that's when you switch to phase 2. So it's like we're breaking the cycle for seed cycling with your menstrual cycle. It's like we're breaking the cycle in half. So phase 1 from day 1 of your period, phase 2 from around day 15 or ovulation. If you find that you are, say you're seed cycling with your menstrual cycle and you're at the end of your phase 2 seeds, but you haven't got your period yet, then just wait it out. So, so you would stop taking any seeds for a couple of days until your period arrives, and then you switch to phase 1. Same if you're taking phase 2 and you haven't quite finished the container, but you get your period, switch, and you're seed cycling with your cycle, then switch over to phase 1. If you're seed cycling with the moon and you get your period, that's great. Note that down. Once you see a couple regular cycles, then switch over to seed cycling with your menstrual cycle. How does that sound? Put a Y in the chat if you got it. Good, is a Y. I really want to make sure that you're, walking away going, I get it.
And I always find, and this is always what we hear, the first time you hear about it conceptually, you're a bit like, how do I get started? But once you get through that first month, whether you're cycling with your period or your cycle, or you're cycling with the moon, it's super easy. And I know for me, I wake up and it's almost like I don't even have to think about it. I just know where I'm at.
Yeah, so true. So we have our Black Friday sale, which is the biggest sale of the year. If you've been following us on Instagram, I've been sharing a little bit behind the scenes. So my husband, Luke, has taken over Black Friday this year, which when he said he'll do it, I'm like, yes. So he's been making sure that we have enough stock, which I think we will have stock for another couple of days. And there's different percentages off different products. If you sign up to a subscription, you already get it cheaper, and you get a flat rate shipping, and then it gets sent to you every month. So it's nice and easy. For the protein, we have subscription 50% off. And then the bake mixes, I think, are 45% off first month. And then the phase 1 and 2 is 40% off. And then you can buy a one-off purchase as well. So my cycle is short but regular, 21 days. Can I seed cycle in 2 phases? Yeah, I would. So 21 days, Sarina.
Are you, Francis, do you know whether you're ovulating? Do you know how to check for signs of ovulation? Which is typically egg white like mucus.
Yeah, I know. I can tell when I'm ovulating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you may just have a shorter cycle.
Yeah.
So that way you can seed cycle with phase 1 up until ovulation. So when you notice that fertile mucus, and then you can switch to phase 2. You'll probably have a little bit of product left over that you can start again in the next cycle, and then just move on to whichever product you're using next for the remainder of the cycle. Hopefully that makes
Okay,
sense.
so I would start phase 2 when I'm ovulating. That's the thing.
Yes, yeah. And you may even notice that your cycles elongate, because ideally, I mean, if you've had a 21-day cycle for forever, it may just be your cycle. But ideally, we want to be seeing that cycle between sort of the 24-35-day mark.
Okay.
Yeah, please keep us updated, because I think that after seed cycling a couple months, you might find that your cycle lengthens out a little bit, which would be good.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Another question we get asked is like, can I have more than the one product? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So like each product has your recommended therapeutic doses for seed cycling, but you might, to get an extra nutrient boost, you might have like the seeds. So you might have the phase 1 seeds in your breakfast, and then for a snack, you might have the brownie, or then later in the day, you might have the protein. And that's completely fine. Like we were saying, like it's food is medicine. If you have IBS, and like, or, you know, if you're coming off like a really highly processed food diet, might be a bit too much fiber, but for most people, like I'm always doubling up. Like I love it. It fills me up, gives me lots of nutrients, gives me energy. So doubling up is fine. I've also written a book, and it's called Seeds of Sisterhood, and it's available now on Amazon. So if you would like to know more about like the research of seed cycling, the origins of seed cycling, where seeds were used within throughout history, I also talk about the red tent, my own journey, and my family's journey with menstrual health. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. I didn't like, it's so interesting, like the business, like I never set out to write a book. It kind of just happened. And then I was like, oh, I've written a book.
I can
And
confirm it's amazing.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's incredible. Got to #1 on Amazon, which was also just a pinch me moment. And yeah, it's only been, I'm still getting used to speaking about it because it's only been like a couple of weeks since it's been out. It feels very surreal, but I would love for you to read my book as well. Thank you. Oh, so another really great thing that we do is you can book a 15-minute mini nutrition consult with Sarina on the Seed Cycle website. It's just under Seed Cycle mini consultations. So if you do want to have more of a chat with Sarina, you can do that. What is the flat rate shipping for a subscription? Within Australia, it's $15. Yeah, and so everything gets shipped out from our manufacturer in Queensland. They're incredible. They're in the Sunshine Coast, and so they grind up all the seeds there. We were doing it from home for a while, and then we just couldn't keep up. And then we found this amazing manufacturer. So they do all the manufacturing, and they ship out from Sunshine Coast as well.
And we'd love to open the floor to any questions you have. It can be related to your cycle, it can be related to hormone health, to seed cycling. So this is a really good opportunity to get those answered live. If anyone has questions. Fabulous, we've explained it well then. How does EFT link with seed cycling? Good question.
Yeah, oh my gosh, EFT is like my first love. Like I think Sarina will try to feel the same way. It is so incredible at supporting your nervous system, and it's a tool that you can use yourself. So I like to use an analogy of like it's like going into a gym, and so you can do weights on your own and it helps, and you get stronger and it's incredible, and that's like you can teach yourself how to do EFT and it's incredible. But if you're going to lift heavy weights, you want someone to spot you, you want someone like a PT to help you to know what you're doing, and that's kind of what you want to do if you're working with an EFT tapping practitioner. So if there's things that that are hard, beliefs like trauma, that's where you would want to really work with an EFT practitioner. We could do a whole masterclass on like hormone health and cortisol and stress, because it's a huge, I can't believe we didn't even mention that today, but it's a huge contributor. So
yeah, that's a whole thing in itself, really.
Yeah. So I think that's the link as well, is like using EFT to support your hormones. That would be incredible. All right, let's do it. We could do like a tapping session, like a guided session together, and talk about EFT and like hormones and stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Izzy, that's almost how I started off with 100% nutrition clients and worked a lot in the hormone health space and supporting women's menstrual cycles with lifestyle and nutrition changes. And then when I found EFT and became a practitioner, my practice now has shifted to 90% EFT clients, because if you look at, the women that I was working with had really high stress, they had anxiety, they had had traumatic events such as sexual assault, or they had had a pregnancy termination or a pregnancy loss, and our body holds on to all of that if it's not processed. And as Mel said, in terms of cortisol, if we have our reproductive hormones, and then which is our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone, our LH, FSH, if they're over here and we have cortisol is always going to be made predominantly as our kind of threat hormone, our survival hormone. So that will always outweigh producing our sex hormones. So if there is really high cortisol, you can supplement till the cows come home. You can eat a perfectly clean diet. But if your little adrenals are constantly working, whether that's consciously or subconsciously, then that can be, like you said, kind of that missing piece in your hormone health.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Let's make sure we talk more about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it is. It's huge.
yeah, huge.
Oh, well, thanks, Sarina. Thanks, everyone. I hope that was helpful. I would love for you to keep in contact, particularly give us updates on how you're going with your seed cycling practice. We're here to support you. We'd love to share. And like, if you're on our Instagram, you'll see like lots of recipes and ways you can seed cycle. And we're always sharing new information and research. So please keep in touch. Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.